Good afternoon, everybody. Alex Camelio here, CEO at the Agent Inner Circle and head instructor of the Real Estate Technology Institute. We are going to wait for a minute here for everybody to join the room, and then we are going to hop right on into the presentation. So give us a minute here and we'll get started. All right, for everybody joining, we're just going to give this another minute or two here for the last people to join into the room, and then we'll get underway. Starting in just a minute here. All right, I have 3:01 now. I know everybody's time is valuable, so I want to get started on time for all those folks that joined by 3. Thank you so much for the folks that did join. As you heard, my name is Alex Camelio. I am the CEO of a group called the Agent Inner Circle. It's a community where agents can help each other, as well as we put out a lot of articles every week in terms of helping you with everything from lead generation, marketing, to negotiating a deal. So definitely check that out. But today, the group putting this on is the Real Estate Technology Institute. You can go check that out at reti.us, but we're going to get into the webinar at this point. So today we're going to talk about generating referrals with online reviews and how you can use reviews, get more reviews, and really set yourself up to get more business because of it. Now, really what we're going to cover today in terms of the first 8 points is we're going to start by going into why reviews are so important. Talk to you a little bit about what the trends are, where it's going, and why it's so important to get reviews right now. Then we're going to go into where people are actually reviewing you. So what websites they're reviewing you on, where you should be paying attention to getting those reviews, and following up with people, and then paying attention to just where people are reviewing you organically. After that, it's how do I stay up to date? So how do you get alerted when new reviews come online and things like that, so you don't have to be constantly searching. Then we're going to get into what's important to get in a review. And then probably most importantly is how do I actually get a review? How do I get those people that have loved my services to go out and review what I'm doing? Then we're going to talk a little bit about managing a bad review, because if you do manage a bad review correctly, oftentimes you can even turn that into more business. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about turning a review into a referral and the specifics of using all of what we've gone over in today's webinar to set up how to actually turn that into a referral. And really what it comes back to at the end of the day is creating an experience that's worth reviewing, right? So it's all sort of circular. You want to set up the expectations and then deliver on those expectations, and we'll be covering that today. So we're going to jump right on into why reviews are so important. First of all, got ahead of myself there. Lots of consumers are out there and they're looking at reviews in all different sorts of spaces. Meaning, if you're going to a restaurant, right, and it's a new restaurant, or maybe you're in a new city going to a new place, one of the first things that you're going to do is go to a review site. Maybe it's Yelp, maybe it's one of the others, but you're going to go look up and say, well, what have other people said about this restaurant? What a lot of folks call that is social proof, meaning the other people are talking about it and telling me that it's great. We all visit, or a lot of us visit TripAdvisor when we're planning a vacation. or check out customer reviews on Amazon even before we're buying products there, or look to Yelp for info. I mean, even if you're searching Siri and you're using the Siri product with your iPhone device, that's actually searching Yelp when it's looking up that local business information. So all over the place, we're seeing reviews sort of fall into our everyday and natural lives. And that being said, they're falling into the real estate industry as well. Now, when we look at reviews, the amazing part to me a lot of the times is how much weight a lot of people will put into reviews. So for example, 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. That always strikes me. That 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. That's kind of astounding when you think about it, because what that is saying is that if you're sitting over, at the coffee table, or you're, at dinner with a friend and you tell them about a new restaurant, they're just as much as likely to trust that online review as they are that recommendation you just gave them. So they can be incredibly powerful. 72% of consumers say that positive reviews make them trust a local business more. So it sets up those folks to be working with you. 92% of users will use a local business if it has at least a 4-star listing. And we're going to get into how important stars are within the review process. And then 72% of consumers will take action only after reading a positive review. And a lot of people are waiting to take action before they, to read reviews before they take action. And it's becoming a really important part of people's buying process. So you want to be comfortable that the reviews that are out there about you are positive. Now, the other parts that really strike me is how often we're using these. Not just that we put a lot of weight in them when we do read them, but that we are consistently doing this on a daily basis. So 92% of consumers regularly or occasionally read online reviews. Now, this is versus 88% in 2014. So those numbers are even still rising. That leaves us with 8% that are not consistently reading reviews online. That's a very tiny percentage of people that are not using them to some extent. So again, we start seeing why the importance of this grows more and more. As I mentioned before, 80% will trust reviews as much as personal recommendations if they meet their requirements, versus 83% in 2014. This is out of a group called Bright Local. So again, we're seeing 80% and above of people trusting those recommendations consistently year over year from various reports. So it's kind of amazing to start seeing how much trust people are putting into these reviews that are making themselves out there and online. Now, 40% of consumers form an opinion by reading 1 to 3 reviews. And now the reason we're going to talk about this is it's important to have reviews consistently and all of the time, meaning you don't necessarily just want to get 10 reviews up there and leave it stagnant forever. Folks, first of all, are only going to read the most recent few because they want to know what's happening recently with your business, right? A review from 3 or 4 years ago, even if it's prominent, probably doesn't make sense. Even if it's a fantastic review, people tend to want something, newer, and they're reading these last few. That's where they're sort of putting the priority, right? Only 12% are prepared to read more than 10 reviews. Okay, so a huge number fall in this 1 to 10 range, that 88% again, and something to pay attention to in terms of how often the reviews are out there. Now, in real estate, it's a little bit different, and these numbers have changed and come up a bit, and I should say more than a bit since then. But this is back from a 2015 report talking about how many folks actually used online recommendations and it influenced the choice of their agent over time. This comes from the 2015 NAR Digital House Hunt. But we've actually seen those numbers come up in the past few years, and the use of recommendations seems to be growing pretty rapidly within real estate, which I guess I'm not surprised about. We tend to see things like that with the technology space work a little bit quicker for e-commerce and retail as opposed to making their way into some of the real estate spaces. So As you can see here, though, even at that, a good number of folks are paying attention to them and watching these recommendations online. Now, we're going to close up on the stats here pretty soon, I do promise. But one thing we want to get to is that they're not just reading on one device. People are all over the place on all sorts of different devices, mobile, desktop, tablet, reading these reviews. So don't just pay attention to a platform, say, your website that may only work on one device or another. It is really important to make sure that these are available to folks on any device that's out there. So that brings us to, where are people actually reviewing you, right? Where are they going to add these reviews online? And as you can see here, there are a huge number of choices. We have LinkedIn, there's Zillow, there's Realtor.com, there's Real Satisfied, there's Yelp, and the list seemingly goes on and on and on about places where people can actually review you. Now, the interesting part in that is, to some extent, you have to monitor these places, because sure, everyone could review you all over the place. However, these review sites are not really created equal. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to leave a review or read a review, are you more likely to trust a review that comes from user 12345 at whatever-website.com, or are you more likely to trust, say, John or Susie or Bill or whoever it is? Well, the thing with this and with these sites is, some of these sites allow for anonymous reviews. Others of the sites make sure that someone is registered, they're an actual user, before leaving those, before allowing those reviews to be put online. Because we're going to talk about focusing in on driving people toward one source, one place to review you, you want to make sure that when you look at what location that you're picking to drive people toward, that you're choosing a place where folks are registered, they're actual users, and when they leave that review, they're going to show up to other consumers as an actual person. But beyond that, though, there's a couple things to pay attention to. Some people have been really, really great with Yelp. They've loved that. I've also seen some fantastic places, sorry, I have a little cold today. Fantastic use of LinkedIn. But that being said, because a lot of consumers are out there searching sites like Zillow or like Realtor.com, those aren't necessarily terrible places to have some reviews either. So at least there are a few out there. Now, we'll continue on, and we'll talk a little bit about Yelp, because it's become a pretty standard staple for folks that are reviewing things like restaurants and other businesses. But it's not as much of a staple in real estate. But we're hoping to, not just hoping, we're seeing that pick up over time as people are seeing more power with it. Excuse me, sorry again. Now, Yelp has become a staple for consumers that are looking for reviews. One of the reasons, as I mentioned before, is that Siri, when it searches for local businesses, is using the database from Yelp, because Apple owns Yelp. It does require folks to be logged in to give reviews, and does a very good job as a review site. So it's not a terrible place to send folks when you are sending people or asking for reviews from people. Now, we see here one great example of someone who's doing it really well is a gentleman named Richard Silver, based in Toronto. He does a great job with his Yelp page, has turned an incredible amount of business from it. So in terms of an example, that is a great example to look at. Again, Richard Silver, Sotheby's International Realty in Toronto. His Yelp page is really stellar, really kind of, over the top and fantastic in terms of how it's done. So certainly something to look at and model against if Yelp is the decision you make in terms of a review platform. But we've seen that these reviews are all over the place, and we need to figure out, how do we keep up to date with all of them, right? I mean, it's kind of a pain, but we need to make sure that if people are putting reviews online about us, that we're hearing about it. One really great tool for this is called Google Alerts. And for the folks that don't know or haven't used Google Alerts before, what it does is you can run a standard Google search. Maybe it's for your name or your email address or your company name or things like that. And anytime a new piece of information comes online about that word or that company or whatever it might be that matches your search criteria, Google sends you an alert and says, hey, just so you know, the new website came up. Now, the same thing will work for specific websites. So you can say, I want to have Google tell me anytime someone mentions my name within these set of websites or things of that nature. And you can be you can really drill down and look at and get very specific alerts and updates from Google. So that's one tool. Another one I've heard that some folks have had a good use of is a company called Social Mention. Just sort of a suggestion and not a tool I personally use, but I've heard it recommended from another number of people. So certainly something to think about. So Google Alerts and Social Mention are both fantastic tools in terms of, making sure you stay up to date on all the reviews across all the review sites that are out there. Excuse me. Now, when you are asking for these reviews and you're having people go to all of these review sites, we're going to give you a little bit more background information about what consumers are actually looking for. And I mentioned stars briefly before. But if you think about it, this is very, very important because, again, when you're picking a site, you want to make sure that people have the ability to review you with stars, ideally 5 stars. 1 out of 5. It's kind of amazing, but that has become the golden standard for reviews these days, what consumers really are looking for. And it's kind of astounding to think of, but those stars are in many ways more important than the beautifully worded 2-paragraph, this was an amazing agent sort of reviews. Getting those stars is very, very important because that's what consumers tend to be looking at. Now, then the second thing that's most important is quantity of reviews, okay? So overall star rating followed by the number of reviews, meaning the more work you do to go out and get people to review you, and the more reviews you have, the more people trust those reviews, the more people base their decisions off of those reviews. Now, we can all say that in our normal lives, right? How many times have you looked up a restaurant and gone, well, this one is a 4.2 stars, but it has 3 reviews. And then you look at the next restaurant and go, well, that one's 4 stars, but it has 30 reviews. Which one is better in your head, right? Even though that other one has 4.2, only 3 people did it. Again, we're talking about that whole thing called social proof, that people are out there, you're listening to other people saying they loved it and following along. And then beyond that, consumers sort of take a holistic view and consider many aspects of a business's review. So they're looking at the general sentiment, the age of the reviews, as I mentioned before, that's the 4th most important. So you don't have, 2 and 3-year-old reviews just sitting out there. And then the last one on the list here is if a business has responded to reviews. Now, we're going to show you the 2 reasons a little later on as to why responding to every single review that's out there is so important, okay? Now, let's dive in, and we'll think about we talked about stars for a little bit, right? This is what we're talking about in terms of recent reviews. Most folks want your reviews within the 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 to 3 month range. And after that, it starts falling off terribly. If you're sitting there and most of your reviews are from 3, 6, 6 to 12, etc. months ago, it really doesn't matter how fantastic those paragraphs are about you because people really are looking, as we said, the most important or second most important here after stars for how recent they are. So you really, really need recent reviews to make an impact. Now that leads us to how do we get the review? And getting a review, we actually posted an article on Agent Inner Circle recently. If you want to reference that article, it's there in our archives, as well as this webinar will be on reti.us for a week. But the getting the review, we break down into basically 4 categories. And that is what we call preview, give, guide, ask. Okay? And there's one more I add at the end, which is called thanks. But preview, give, guide, ask. That's your basic 4-step plan. Now, preview, what you're going to do there is when you actually start working with someone, you're going to do 2 things. You're going to first talk to them about what the expectations are that they should have. Basically, you're going to sit down and say, hey, as part of this, I'm going to be providing X, Y, and Z. And as part of that, you're going to say, hey, after this transaction, after you've bought or sold your home or whatever the case might be, would you mind if I sent you a review afterward to review my work based on these expectations that we're setting up? Setting your expectations is absolutely critical, okay? And the reason for that, sorry, bumped ahead there. The reason for that is that with a preview and asking them ahead of time, you're setting the expectations so that their expectations are not wildly different from yours, because we hear that all the time. Someone leaves a review and they go, well, I don't know why they thought I would be doing that work for them or those things for them or so on. So setting that expectation is absolutely critical. The other thing is it gives people the opportunity to start thinking about all those things that you did right and that you delivered on while the transaction is happening. So by the time you go to ask them for a review, they've already thought maybe about it a few times going, oh yeah, they delivered on this and this and this and this, and they really did a fantastic job. They don't have to go back through the whole process again themselves and think about what to review you on because, well, heck, you've already given them what they're reviewing you on. Now they just need to do it. The next thing is that you need to give them the review. And what I mean by that is you want to guide them toward one site and send them toward one site. But that's not guiding. That's just saying, hey, here's the review. Here's the place. You're sending them the link and then the instructions. And that's where it comes into guiding, meaning the link with the instructions shouldn't just be, hey, I'm wondering if you can go review me on this site. But give them some reminders that then guide them toward what sort of things that you want them to talk about. So ask them very specific questions. I'd really appreciate if you were to give me a review. We really like to know how we did on X, Y, Z, and these certain things that are meaningful to you and that you set up as expectations within the process. Now, as that reminder of what you set up for an expectation, once again, you're setting them up for success. You're giving them pretty much what they need and taking a lot of the guesswork and work out of it for them. You're pulling down walls and pulling down barriers for them to go and give you a review. The last one we say is ask. And that is you need to ask for a review over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I say it that many times for a very specific reason. Most people don't know this, but there's a wild number of emails that you have to send to get a response from someone. And normally when I'm in a live class, I'll ask people any guesses. And I always hear, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? The number is roughly 8. You need to send 8 emails before you get a response from someone. And I'm not just talking on reviews. I'm talking marketing, other sorts of emails. It's usually 8. Now, if we think about that for a minute, we might go, well, I don't want to pester them, right? I don't want to bug them. I don't want to all that sort of stuff. In all of the studies that I've read, when people are asked, well, were you bugged or were you annoyed that you kept getting all these emails? Most times in situations like this, they don't actually say, well, yeah, I was really annoyed, because they can always tell you. They can always unsubscribe. Normally what the response is, oh, well, I meant to do it, but I forgot to. And those emails were actually good reminders to make sure that, I ended up going and doing this. So it's really important not to just ask once, but to ask over and 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 over again. Okay? And then the last one, it's not included in the bullet points here, but I always say thank you, right? At the very end of a transaction. We'll cover that towards the end, but that really should be our 5th bullet point. Preview, give, guide, ask, thank you, because those thank yous can absolutely turn into referrals and business down the road. And we're going to get that to the returning referrals section. Now, the other thing you can do in terms of getting the review is setting up some other sort of guides and reasons for them to actually do it for you. So the first is direct incentives. Some people will give away, Starbucks gift cards or things like that for those people to review them. And I think that's a fantastic idea. I would prefer to, get organic reviews, but hey, as we saw, you need reviews consistently. So direct incentives, fantastic if you want to do something in that nature. The next one is customer engagement. And what that means is that you're not just following up with them about reviews, but you also have some sort of newsletter or system after a sale that you're talking to them consistently in some other manner as well. Don't just disappear from their lives entirely and just be sending in an online review follow-up. You want to be following up with them in many different ways, usually about monthly. After that, we get into social recognition. So if people do leave reviews for you, you want to share them out. You want to say thank you very publicly on social media, assuming the client's okay with that. But you want to say thank you publicly on social media. Recognize them, put it out there. A lot of times, because when people start working with you, they'll see that. They'll see you doing that. And it might make them a little bit more likely to leave a review themselves. Now, after that, we getting these reviews coming in. Well, guess what? Every now and again, we get a bad review. And we have some 6 steps here that you can work with to mediate and deal with a bad review. Okay, so the first is contact the review site. Now, some sites will allow you to file a complaint or file a thing that says, oh, this wasn't a real review, or this person's out of their mind, or whatever it is. There's a moderation process to bring it down. Some sites out there, however, say, sorry, too bad, so sad. That's all we can do. Okay, so again, you want to make sure you understand which ones are which. But contacting the site is not a bad idea for those sites that do allow it. The next thing is you want to join the conversation. And let me pause on that for a second, because I always say you don't want to join the conversation immediately, but you do want to join. Okay? And there's always this in fact, there's this fantastic story. One of my favorite books is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And there's this fantastic story in there about how Abraham Lincoln, would write letters and not send them. Meaning he'd write these, he's angry about something. He'd write these letters and then he'd tuck them into a drawer, never to be sent. And joining the conversation with reviews is sort of the same thing. You do want to join, but you don't want to join out of emotion. Okay, you don't want to join and go, what are you talking about? Da, 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 right? You want to join and try to work on it and say, hey, I'm really sorry that that you feel that way. I'm really sorry it didn't work out, or whatever it is. And ask them how you can improve, or tell them what you want to do to improve, to change, to be better in the future. Because in reality, once mistakes happen, that's all we can do. All we can do is choose to better ourselves and better our processes for the future. And most people, when you reach out to them and say, hey, I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. I'm going to use this feedback to improve what I'm already doing in this way. Most people are happy with that. The next thing is, in your response, you want to highlight the positive. So a lot of times people might be frustrated about one very specific part and vent that frustration. But you'll say, hey, thanks for letting me know, all the things I said before in terms of joining the conversation, but you might also say, hey, well, we also sold your home above asking. It was so great that we were able to sell your home above asking. I know this one piece was a frustration, but hopefully, that made up for it, kind of a thing. So you absolutely want to highlight the positive in the deal throughout any of those, responses. You also want to encourage positive reviews. As we saw, people are only reading anywhere from 1 to 10 reviews. They're really not going back beyond that. And they're giving more weight to the reviews that are recent. So one of the best ways to deal with managing a bad review is to drown it in 100 good reviews. If you just add more good reviews, stack more good reviews on your site, yeah, the bad review might still be out there. But you know what? People are humans. When they read a whole set of reviews and it's amazing, 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 and then the fourth one is terrible. It's like, somebody who's having a bad day there, and there are all these amazing reviews. People are human when it comes to that. Fifth one is a big one, and I'm really always sort of on the fence about this, which is develop a strategy for responding to threats. And there are two really two ways to go about this, and I'll give you both angles, and you can choose for your own which way you'd like to go. The first strategy and the threat, and what I mean by the threat is this. Somebody says, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going, and you've done all this work and you've done an amazing job and so on. Someone says, if you don't give me my money back, I'm going to X, Y, and Z. I'm going to badmouth you on every website there is, kind of a thing. Okay, there are two ways to go about that. The first option is you can say, I want to cater to them. I want to bend over backwards. I can't deal with the bad reviews. I don't want those things sitting out there. And you can sort of cater to those threats. And I hate to say it, but a lot of businesses do that and are okay with that. I personally, I don't want bad reviews. I don't want them out there, and I'll do everything I can to be reasonable and work with folks. But, sometimes at the end of the day, you just can't respond to threats. And it's not worth it to, say, I'm going to bend over backwards and respond to a threat for not having it out there. So, they're both options. It's up to you. And really, it depends on your business and the situation and all those sorts of things. The other thing is familiarize yourself with the culture of online review sites. And what that means is we've seen a lot of situations where different review sites are different from one another. So some review sites are meant for, everybody's thoughts kind of a thing, meaning there are a lot of just very positive stuff unless there's a couple negatives here and there. Some review sites are really focused more on, well, how do we improve the business? So everybody coming there didn't necessarily have a bad experience. They're just there sort of saying, hey, I want to help you improve. So make sure that you understand that culture before responding to it, because especially over text, a lot can get lost. And you don't want to get the wrong tone or the wrong message from somebody because you're not really familiar with the site and where they're reviewing you to begin with. Okay, so those are some of your strategies for managing a bad review. And what we've seen is if you can do a good job of managing a bad review, a lot of times we've seen those clients that have left a bad review get turned around, right? And people work out their differences. And a lot of times we've even seen it go a step further, where people will read your response to somebody else's bad review and go, wow, not only does this person have a bunch of great reviews over here, but they deal with a bad review really professionally. A lot of times you can tell a lot about a person, not just from how they do when the times are good, but how they do when the times are bad, and how professional they are when the situation might get a little bit heated when it comes to a review. So you can really stand out by managing a bad review correctly. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about turning those reviews into a referral. Okay. The first is don't just create a review system or a place for people to review you on your site, but if you can, create a guided survey, okay? A guided survey. And here's how a guided survey works. So first, you start with a simple question, which is, how would you refer us on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay? And maybe it's 1 to 5 based on the star scale, depending on how you want to set it up. But in a survey, you can say, okay, how would you refer us on a scale of 1 to 10? And then based on what they respond with, you start doing different things. You serve up different questions afterwards. So if they say 1 through 6, right, they're not really going to refer you. You start asking them questions about what went wrong, okay? Then if they review you a 7 or 8, the questions that you're going to be serving up to them are things that are more along the lines of, find out one thing that you can do to improve. Reach out and say, hey, I noticed that it was only a 7 out of 8. What was the thing that I could do the one thing I can do to improve on that process? Sometimes you can work that right into the same form. And then if they're rating you a 9 or 10, that's when you want to reach out to them, ask them to start reviewing you on very specific sites because they already love you. They say you did a great job, and then add them to a drip campaign for referrals because these folks are your evangelists. These are the folks that will talk you up, the folks that are rating you a 9 out of 10, and you found your target audience for those folks to go after for referrals. So not only are you using this for reviews, right, and ways to turn those online reviews, now you can quickly start turning those reviews, right, into very specific referrals. Now, there are other ways to do this, okay, and all of those require some things. Now, first of all, what do referrals require? 1 is a good match, and 2 is repeated interactions. We've covered this pretty consistently, but if you set up the expectation, you match those expectations, and then you continue following up consistently, right? Those are key for referrals. And what I mean by a good match is you might not fit every person that they could tell that, who to buy or sell a home with. You might do a very specific, you might have, let's see, for example, you only did condos with them. Well, maybe they think you're a condo person. You don't do residential real estate, or vice versa. Reminding them that you do all these things makes it a lot more likely that you end up with a referral at the end. So first, you want to ask these folks consistently. You want to teach your clients how to refer you. So as part of these follow-ups with the demographic that we've just targeted, you actually want to teach your clients, okay, if you're going to refer me to these people, here's a link that you can send them to that has all the information about it. Here's a way to refer people to me. Not just the greatest thanks you can give me is a referral. You need to go a step further than that, okay? Then you need to remind them to refer you, okay? And not just for, say, condos. Remind them to refer you for other things. Be specific, okay? Then you're going to make it easy. Give them the easiest way possible to do it. Take down every barrier you can. And last but not least, say thank you as often as possible. If they have sent you a review, don't just thank them once. Thank them when it starts, when they first sent it to you. And then, hey, when that deal closes, why not send them another thank you? A follow-up that says, hey, I just want to let you know that, Susie that you sent me, they closed on their home and the deal's done. Thank you again for setting them up with me. Okay, the more times you can say thank you and follow up with them, the better, and the more likely that they are to refer you. Now, here's some general other ideas in terms of turning those referrals or reviews into referrals. Make sure your client knows about all of your services, everything that you offer that's on the table. Add a form to your website for referrals, so you're giving them that one specific place to go. You want to update your social media profiles. Make sure that they have the most up-to-date information, because a lot of times when clients are going to send people to you. That's the first place that they're going to look for your information. And last one here is give a referral. One of the best ways to get is to give. So if you know a business, I've seen this work in a ton of different ways with everyone from inspectors to, restaurants. It really does go into every industry. The more you can do to refer other businesses and let them know that you're referring people to them, the more likely they are to send you business. Okay? And I'm going to close today on this note. Now, we're going to have questions after this, and you can feel free to put those on the chat. But I'm going to close with a note about being remarkable and inspiring confidence. And this is a quote from Maya Angelou that's one of my favorites. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So when you think about that in terms of turning reviews into referrals, keep in mind, throughout these buying processes, be remarkable and inspire confidence. So I hope you've learned a lot today. One thing I will mention again is this was put on by the Real Estate Technology Institute. They're a fantastic group. It's a website with over 600 training videos on how to use all sorts of different technology. You can go there. You can actually see a demo of it and get a demo of the site, reti.us/demo. Wonderful, wonderful site. Like I said, over 600 training videos, things of that nature, as well as over 50 webinars at this point. Webinars from all of us for the last year plus. All right, so I'm going to leave this open for a couple minutes here. We're going to be just answering questions at the end, so feel free to put those in the chat. All right. Thank you again to everybody who did join. Greatly appreciate it. We appreciate you taking the time today and hope it was valuable. All right. Well, it looks like the room's closing down at this point. Thank you so much again for your time. I'm going to close down the webinar. We greatly appreciate it. Again, that's reti.us, Real Estate Technology Institute, who has put this on. My name is Alex Camelio, CEO of the Agent Inner Circle. I would definitely suggest that you check that out as well. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. And until next time.